Good day, Saviors. This is Unraid Gaming Hardcore, and welcome back to another Tree of Savior video. And for this one, it's going to be Sapper, Wugushi, and Matross. So what we're gonna do is show to you guys how this build works, and also the main skills you're gonna be using. And I'll explain to you guys why each of these classes are here in this build, then the disadvantages and advantages. And without further ado, let's do this. There goes the build. We got the cannon-wielding Matross, the poison class Wugushi, and the trap master Sapper. And as usual, we're gonna be testing it out on the fields to show you guys what this build is all about. And before we start, we're gonna be using Kidoran items that are given away for free, so that the new players can relate easily. So please keep that in mind. Okay, here we go. We made this build with the purpose in mind of making Matross as the main class of this build. Then we selected Sapper and Wugushi to compensate for the deficiencies of Matross. Because to be honest with you, Matross is a bit lacking in both single target and AoE. Yes, AoE, but not that much in the AoE side. The only problem with Matross in terms of AoE is cooldown. And to fix that, we added two classes. And before we start exploring those two classes, let's take a look at Matross first. Now, Matross is a cannon-wielding class that focuses on maximizing the cannon's firepower. And it's here because this is the centerpiece of this build. And with that said, what are the skills that you need to watch out for that made Matross a worthwhile main class? First off, Explosion. Now, Explosion is a skill that shoots at the targeted enemy, causing an explosion that can spread to nearby enemies, making it a perfect mobbing skill. Well, not that perfect, because the cooldown is the problem of this skill, which is 20 seconds, and that's way too long. Regardless, it's still one of the main skills you're gonna be spamming against a group of enemies. Next skill is Crouching Strike, and this is your crowd control skill with 10 seconds cooldown. It's not that strong in terms of damage, but it's very useful in situations where you need to knock down enemies. Third skill in the Matross class skill list is Fire and Run. Now, this skill is an attack that makes you jump back after executing the attack. And during that jump back animation, you are immune to damage, making it an iframe skill. So when you time it correctly, you can avoid one-shot attacks. Next skill is Canister Shot. Now, this is another crowd control skill that draws enemies to the location of the skill. Then it explodes after a certain amount of time. Now, this skill is good in combination with some of the Wugushi skills, and we're gonna talk about that in a minute, because there's another skill we need to discuss, and it's Roar. Now, Roar is a buff that increases cannon damage, both regular attacks and skills. Use this when you're ready to deal some cannon-based skills. Okay, that's the Matross class. Now let's head on to Wugushi. Now, Wugushi is a class that specializes in using various poisonous attacks. And it's here because aside from you can use a cannon weapon with all of the Wugushi skills, it's here to compensate for the problems of Matross in mobbing due to cooldown and also boss fighting problems. Because Wugushi got some skills that can really prove useful for boss fighting because of its wide range of poison element skills, which is very effective against fire, ice, lightning, and earth element. So what are those skills? First on the list is Poison Pot. And this skill creates a poison puddle by throwing a pot filled with poison, and any enemy who comes in contact with that puddle is poisoned. Another thing about this skill is you can use a boss monster skill if you have the appropriate boss monster card, like this. And to be able to determine if the boss monster card is usable with Poison Pot, just make sure it's written in the description that you can use it for Poison Pot. Second skill is Jinkangu. Like Poison Pot, you also throw something in the ground. And when the enemy comes into contact with that, they get a debuff that causes enemies to give birth to some nasty insect when they get defeated. Problem with this skill is the Jinkan in the ground is too small, and one way to fix this problem is by combining it with Canister Shot. the Matross skill. And while you're at it, you might as well use Poison Pot first, then Jinkang Gu, then Canister Shot for better effect. Next skill is Wide Miasma. Now this one is an area attack that spreads a toxic cloud that poisons enemies within range. And this also makes the caster invisible for a short amount of time. Very useful, but I mainly use this for boss fighting. Next skills are Latent Venom and Wugong Gu. Both are good single target skills, but the difference is Wugong Gu lasts for only 10 seconds and spreads to nearby enemies when the Wugong Gu target is being hit. And Latent Venom lasts 100 seconds and gets stronger as time passes. Now for the last Wugushi skill, Crescendo Bane. Now this skill makes all your poison debuff time accelerate, making all your poison debuffs inflict faster. And I only use this skill in boss fighting, and what I would do is use all the Wugushi skills, then use Crescendo Bane at the end for maximum effect. Okay, that's the Wugushi. I guess it's time for Sapper. Now Sapper is a class that uses traps to inflict damage to targets. And it's here because it's another class that does not require a specific weapon to be used. And also because this can compensate for the cooldown of Matross skills. And with that said, what are those Sapper skills? First skill is Boom Trap. Now this trap is a rotating trap that inflicts damage to enemies within its radius. Obviously, as you can see, this trap is very good to use for mobbing, but unfortunately, this trap cannot hit flying enemies. It could have been good, could have been better if it did, but it doesn't. Anyways, the next skill I believe is the skill that redeems Sapper. It's called Spike Shooter. Now this skill sets up a trap that automatically shoots arrows, and the setup time is just a split second. This is a very good skill for mobbing and boss fighting due to its duration and number of hits. But the problem of this skill is when your target moves around, it becomes useless. So make sure to keep your target in front of your spike shooter for maximum damage. One way to stop your target from moving is with the use of leg hold trap. And as the name suggests, this trap holds enemies down for 5 seconds. And also inflicts damage and can be used 3 times. So that's about 15 seconds of leg hold trap debuff. I use this when I need the boss to stop moving. So those are the important Sapper skills. And that's the class build. I guess it's time for the advantages and disadvantages. For the advantage, one thing that I can surely say about this build is you can deal with most situations like mobbing and boss fighting because of the combination of both Wugushi and Sapper skills. And with Matross on the build, it makes mobbing all the more easier. Another thing is additional damage when you're fighting either Fire Ice, Lightning, and Earth element because of the Wugushi poison skills. Another thing is the ability to deal damage and move at the same time. That's very important in some raid dungeons. For the disadvantage, if you are aiming for a build that's always number 1 in the raid boss damage, this build isn't for you because this build is not the best single target class build out there. It's good enough, but it's not number 1. Another thing is you need to deal with poison amount. And there are times that you run out of poison at the middle of the raid boss battle. So that's a problem. Same goes for the Sapper items. All in all, this build is entertaining to use. Well, at least for me. Because this is not your regular skill spammer. And installing trap, putting poison puddles on the ground, then using canister shot on a bunch of enemies is fun. I don't know about you guys, because I'm sure that this is why we play. That's it, guys. That's another Tree of Savior video. Hit the subscribe button. Come on, we're close to the 1,000 mark. We can do this. Anyways, thank you guys for subscribing. You guys are awesome. And this is Unreal Gaming Hardcore. See you the next one.